quick recap to understanding the general barriers, the English language barriers to communication in terms of homonyms, homophones and homographs. Homonyms, homo means same, nyms means the name. So when I say light, it is with regards to same spelling, same pronunciation but different meaning. I'm feeling light and can you switch on the light. Homophones, when we talk of phones means sound. So I say here and here. Can you please come here? That is coming here. And in terms of the fact that I hear you, that's with regards to listening. So what happens here is the pronunciations for it the same, spelling is different and the meaning of it is also different. And last we have what is we known as homographs. When we talk of homographs, graphs as in the pronunciations. So when I say the word minute or can you wait? So please wait for me. The spelling is different for wait for me versus this is my wait. The pronunciation is the same and the meaning is different. That's where we finish off in understanding the language barriers, general and specific to English language. Now we move to understanding the third type of barrier to communication, which is with regards to socio-cultural barriers. Now we have moved to the third type of barrier to communication, which is a socio-cultural barrier to communication. What happens in socio-cultural barrier to communication, as the word suggests, it's with regards to somebody's, the way a person behaves in a certain society as per the culture of what he or she belongs to. And in general, we can say the culture is the set of values or the kind of behavior that a particular community, whether it be in terms of nationality, whether in terms of religion, whether it be some subculture, how they behave, the norms, the traditions, it can be understood as the cultural aspect. Now, the very important cultural aspect, the very first kind of differentiation is between the male and female. The way the males are treated across in our society is way different from how females are treated. Males, somewhere down the line, have been given a superiority status. They are things in larger section of the world is where the guys are the decision makers. They are the ones who inherit the family property, the ancestral properties. Of course, the situations are changing. But still, when we can compare it with the Western countries, in Western countries, the way the male and female are, they are at par. In the Eastern, whereas the Middle Eastern countries, the females kind of are still one level lower. We also read the same thing in the newspaper, you know, that there may be a lady female CEO versus a male CEO of an organization, but in terms of the wage, the parity of differences is quite evident. So socio-cultural parameters, and that's how it's been for ages. The males always have a superior hand. They have, in a way, they also have a superiority complex. Sorry for all the males out there, but then that's how they are. Right? It's the girls who basically leave their family and go to stay with the guy's family after marriage. So that's how we can say that there is a male and female divide. So when there is a communication between a male and a female, maybe somebody who is an Indian versus in Western. So where Western, the girl and boy are at par versus in Indian, where the girl's one level lower to the guy, their communication can act as a difference. Second, we understand from the world perspective is the Eastern and Western world differentiations or breakup. The Western countries are more progressive. Their outlook towards life is completely different. They have more of an open culture kind of a policy. Whereas in the Eastern culture, in the Eastern places like India as one of the examples, we have a lot of more respect. We still greet our elders. We stay in a joint family. We do not believe in taking individual decisions. It's more like a family orientation concept that we have. Whereas in Western country, as soon as a child turns 16, he's expected to probably start finding a job for himself, looking after his education. The concept of getting married also, when we talk of the Eastern Western culture. In the Western culture, apparently speaking, it's the girls and guys' responsibility to gather in money and to celebrate the wedding as per their financial capability. Whereas when we look at these Eastern cultures, specifically when we talk of India, in India, it's in a way the parents' responsibility to get their kids married, to look after the expenses of the wedding functions. So these two parameters, we can say that Eastern Western world culture can act as a barrier to communication, and when they're communicating on these two grounds, it's going to be a hell lot of a difference. Then we come down to the North and South Indian territory. We know that in North India, the kind of weather, the kind of climatic conditions, the kind of food preferences, the kind of dressing preferences is way different than what it is in the South. The North people are very comfortable with the whole concept of drinking. No functions apparently have a say without the alcohol parameter into it, whereas in the South, alcohol is in a way prohibited. They wouldn't have alcohol served at the religious functions, weddings, sangeet, XYZ. When we talk of the North parameter, the food habits that they have, they believe in eating proper roti, sabzi, dal, chawal concept. When we look at the South, they are more into the rasam, rice, vada, idli, that kind of food preferences. In terms of the wedding, not just wedding, but in terms of the regular clothes also, we know that the northern part of India has extreme climates, too hot, too cold. So depending on being too cold, they have those long coats. They have a house that's pre-installed with heater as well as an AC. Whereas in the South, the concept of heater doesn't exist only. It's more or less like pretty hot throughout the season. So they prefer wearing lungis in their houses, and even to certain weddings, they may wear good quality, good looking dhotis or lungis as they say, but they wouldn't shy away from wearing the same. So those levels we say that we are differentiating in terms of the socio-cultural aspect. Then we look at the greeting concept. Now in India, whenever we meet strangers or whenever we meet somebody who is, in terms of our status higher, whether it be in terms of the hierarchy of an organization or in terms of meeting informally some elderly relatives, we always greet them with a namaste. We always keep a certain distance when we are communicating with them. But with Western culture, they believe in proper handshake, and there maybe the physical distance or the proximity is not much of an issue. A girl and boy can stand close to each other and it will not be taken wrong. So the way you greet, okay, in terms of India and China. So China or the Japanese people have a habit of bowing down 3 times, and that's how they greet people. Whereas in India, as I again said, it's a namaste for the Hindus or maybe for the Muslims. It's raising your hand and saying salam alaikum salam, right? So that's how we see that even greeting acts as a difference, and depending on it, it can act as a barrier to communication. Then we move to an important barrier to socio-cultural barrier to communication is with regards to your oculosis option or as a parameter, or the eye expression. Okay, in India, we do not look directly into an eye of somebody who's elder to us in terms of either the relationship status or in terms of the hierarchy in an organization. We believe in just occasionally looking at them, and most of the time it has to be down. Maybe here and there, but not directly into the eye. Whereas in the Western culture, if you do not look directly into the eye, they consider that to be, they'll be like, okay, you are fake listening to us, or you are not giving full attention to what we are trying to say. So that way also we say that there is a socio-cultural divide. We say there is a socio-cultural divide with regards to the emotional processes, emotional thought processes. We Indians are very expressive, whether it be birthdays, anniversaries, or festivals. We believe in celebrating it as a family, as a group of people, with the goods and bads together. Whereas in the Western culture, they believe in the individualistic approach. They're not as vocal, as emotional as we are. They wouldn't cry so easily the way we Indians cry. They don't celebrate the smallest of success. Maybe somebody getting into some of the top tier colleges or getting a desired, looked after, sorted after, aspired job. So celebrations, emotions just flow when we talk of the Eastern parameter, when we talk of India as a country. But in the Western culture, these things are like, okay, हाँ ठीक है, तो job मिल गया, उसमें क्या है, worked hard for it, मिल गया, kind of concept, right? So that's how we say that on socio-cultural levels, we get a division: the male-female parameter, the North and South India parameter, the Eastern and Western world parameter, the eye expression parameter, the greetings as a barrier, and lastly the emotional connect that we share with our respective set of families. That constitutes altogether, put together, the socio-cultural barriers. Now we move to understanding the fourth and the last, that is the psychological barrier to communication. We now move to the last part of our chapter where we'll be discussing the psychological barriers. Now psychological, as basically suggests, is the mental parameters or the mental thought processes that one has when they're communicating with the other person. So what is the very first kind of psychological barrier that comes into picture when you're communicating is the whole concept of self-attitude and allness. Okay, self-attitude means I know everything, I am the best, this and that. You have unnecessarily self-centered. Everything needs to be centering around you. You are the most important person. Things should be as per your wills and fancies. So when people who have such kind of attitude, the attitudinal problems, self-revolving around themselves, as if they are the sun and everybody is the planets and they are revolving around them. So when they have such kind of attitude and when they try to communicate, they will always have a sense of allness in them. कि मुझे सब पता है, हाँ ये तो ऐसा ही होता है, ये तो ऐसे ही होता है. So you don't let the other person feel important in a communication, and that is one major reasons why there are miscommunication. When you think you know everything, when you are superior to the one you're trying to communicate with, there will always be a sort of discomfort coming in from the other person who will not let the whole complete communication cycle be complete. Hence, we see that self-centered attitude and the concept of allness can act as a disaster in terms of communication cycle. Second, we move to understanding the concept of self-image. What I feel about myself in terms of what factors I have, what qualities I have, and what qualities I perceive I have, right, is how I portray myself. So if my self-image is real good, I really think good about me, not in the negative or not in the overconfident manner, but in a journalistic manner, that okay, I am good with this, I have a certain flaws, but I'm good with this also, and what I'm good with is what, nothing is going to change what I'm good with. Or the other way around, where I undermine my potentials or my caliber to the lowest level, and I never accept the fact that I am good with it. People may keep telling me that this, but I just don't believe it. So the self-image that I have about myself, positive or negative, best is to be neutral. You accept that you have good things, and then you also accept that you have certain flaws. But if it's on the higher side, it goes up to be your self-attitude, the self-centered attitude. If it is on too lower side, again people will not want to communicate with you because you're always trying to put your own self down in a communication. So a well-balanced kind of an attitude works. Then we move to understanding the third kind of a psychological barrier from the point of view of understanding what is halo and horn effect. Now, halo and horn. In most of the fairy tales mythology, we would have seen that when we talk of fairies, we talk of angels. They were these feathers around themselves. Okay, cute little wings, feather kind of wings, and they have a light kind of a thing on their head. Like a circle of light on their heads, and they're very pure, pristine. Right? When we talk of the devil, the wicked characters of our life, they are kind of reflected through people who are like black and have a lot of like horns on their head. So from that we have derived the concept of halo and horn effect. Halo effect, since we said it's more of an angelistic, fairy kind of a concept, is like you like a person a lot. So you will always tend to agree to what the person is saying. That's like a halo effect. फिर वो wrong भी बोलेगा, तो you will tend to agree to it, flow with it, do as he or she says. Whereas the opposite of it, total eclipse effect, known as the horn effect also, is where you dislike the person so much that whatever he may tell you may be for your betterment, but since you dislike the person, you are never ever going to go with what he or she said, never ever going to accept his or her suggestions. So when you're having a communication with people whom you like and you kind of flow with it because you really love them, okay, we say that they are in the halo effect. Whereas when you're in a conversation, you do not agree with certain person, even if the whole group agrees that that person is right, but because you do not like him, we say that you follow the horn. So there are psychological barriers. Then we have the concept of understanding slant or polarization. So slant, as the word suggests, is bending towards one side, I mean in terms of communication, to the person with whom your ideas, thoughts, likes, dislikes be. Okay, that's different from hollow and horn effect. Is you may just be friends with a person, but when they're having a conversation about certain beliefs that go against you, you may in general like them, but you will not like to communicate with them. You will be like, nahi yaar, aise nahi hota hai. And there is a miscommunication, there is a cut in the communication process, and you go away. Let's give an example. In a group of friends, generally on par, where everybody is friends with each other, no horn or halo effect, and everybody is discussing about Shah Rukh Khan and how he acts, and the whole idea of falling in love. He being one of the Bollywood superstars, that ways. And then one of them says कि भाई क्या यार, क्या overacting करता है, ये है वो है, blah blah blah, negative things about him. So what will happen is, you as a person will then not like that member of the group ki, everybody loves Shah Rukh Khan, how can you just not love him? Like, I really love him. So how can you not love him? So then you will have, you will kind of slant away, you will kind of bend away. इसके साथ मुझे बात नहीं करनी है शाह रुख खान के related, because ये तो उसके बारे में हमेशा negative बोलेगा, right? So that is the whole concept of slant or polarization. That's the bend away. Then we have something which we know, which can be understood as from the point of view of snap reactions. People in general are always in some or the other hurry. Okay, so firstly, snap means clicking of your fingers. Hey, come here, like that, calling somebody with the fingers. So, snap reactions lead to the fact that since they're always in hurry, they're like, kya bolna hai? And because tum itni gaai mein ho, you are in so much of a hurry to finish up the conversation, or just listen to what he has to say and just run away from it, we say that in snap reactions, the person tends to listen to only things that may be important to him, or maybe just listen for the heck of it and then eventually forget what was spoken to him altogether. That's where, again, we play on the mind games, because you are in constant hurry, you're not comprehending what the person is saying and trying to move away from the conversation. So with this, we finish off the psychological barriers. We'll quickly look at it. That is the self-centered or the allness attitude, the self-image of how you perceive yourself to be, right? The horn and halo effect, the snap reactions, and last but not the least, the slant or the polarization aspect. So by and large, this particular chapter, we've understood the various kind of barriers that lead to the communication cycle not being complete. The physical barriers, the psychological barriers, the social-cultural barriers, and the semantic type of the language barriers. And we now move to the next chapter, where we'll be discussing about the listening and hearing, the two important aspects. What it is, let's look in the next chapter.